Well, hello. Welcome to another edition of Happy Campers. I'm your host, Reggie Walsh, and tonight's show we're going to talk about something that I found interesting. I don't know if anyone else found this interesting. That the similarities between the Friday the 13th franchise and the Saw franchise, which is about to have a new edition later this year. If you think about it like this, both films were independent. Both films started a franchise. Both films had a similar director for 2 and 3 that worked on part 1. Both films tried to kill themselves off in the fourth one. There's so many different similarities. It's amazing. I love the torture porn franchise that started in the early 2000s with Saw and Hostel and then all these other films that came out after. It was basically like all the stuff that they were afraid to do in the 80s that they couldn't do because of the MPA. They're not able to do, and it was almost like grossing you out as much as possible. And I remember I was working at the movie theater whenever Hostel came out and actually had people come in ambulances from another movie. Something happened and they used it in the theater to kind of boost up the Saw and Hostel hype, which is amazing. I love stuff like that. But it's like they create these characters, and if you look at the Friday the 13th franchise, it pretty much didn't really have a formula yet. Basically, the formula was like start out with a kill at the beginning, and then introduce a bunch of characters, and then have them all killed off one by one at the toward the film, end of the film. They had the obligatory chase scene, and usually in a barn or in the woods or whatever, and that was it. But it didn't really have a voice, and that's what I love about it. It was organically just created its own voice as the films went on, and that's what I love about it. I could go on and on about stuff like that. I love Friday the 13th. That's why I started doing this podcast, and I'm gonna keep doing this podcast as long as I can. Hopefully, you guys listen, like, leave comments or whatever, voice messages or whatever here on Anchor or whatever other platform you can hear this on. Let me know what you think. This is about you guys, the fans, the ones who love Friday the 13th, the ones who love Jason and want a voice to say, yeah, look, this is what's happened. Because if you look at the history of it, it goes into all the different mediums. You had the TV series, you had the novels, you had the comic books, you have music groups like Alice Cooper doing songs for part 6, and then you have, like, most people in my generation remember the 1998, was it 98 or 99? I can't remember, the Joe Bob Briggs 24-hour marathon, 12-hour marathon. It was like from dusk till dawn, like 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. And that was the coolest thing ever. I loved that. I was there for that one all night, staying up watching, and they did the whole fake out killer killing all the crew and Joe Bob Briggs by himself, and they never revealed who the killer was. And then it was just like all of a sudden, 6 a.m. exactly, everything went to static, and then they started playing Ultraman. I was like, what the fuck? I had this cold, empty feeling inside after that. I was like, what the hell just happened? They're done. And then next week, Joe Bob was just back to doing his regular thing. But that's what I miss. I miss gimmicks like that. They used to do that in theaters all the time, and I need to bring it back. I remember, I'm getting off topic. I didn't talk about theater and theatrical stuff. What I love is that was one of my main goals. Was for years was to open my own theater and do like William Castle style gimmicks and have people come in and do things like the insurance policy in case you die of fright, or like the fright pills, or the scared, if you're scared, they got like the 30-second timer, say this is whenever it's going to get really scary, so you better leave if you can't handle it, you know. And because that's just missing. Then aroma vision. But then that goes into Friday the 13th. Friday was an event film back in the 80s, and I was a kid. I didn't get to experience it like most of you guys who are fans, who were teenagers in the 80s. and were actually old enough to go to the theater and watch these movies in the theater. I mean, this was a gimmick. This was an event. These were amazing films. I mean, I've heard stories about how how it was like a rock concert for part four. Whenever everybody was cheering, whenever Tommy Jarvis killed Jason at the end of part four, it was supposedly the final chapter. And then they're like, "Whoa, this made a lot of money. Let's make another one." And then they just kept going. It became his own entity. Jason became a part of our lexicon, like Jason, Freddy, and then Michael Myers came out. And yeah, then I go off on a tangent. I don't want to go on a tangent, but they talk about the fact that they tried to kill Michael Myers off in part two, and they said we're done. Then part three came out, and it was about the killer masks and the Druid cult. That was their attempt to kind of step out of the slasher genre into like the more supernatural horror genre, which is cool. And then Friday the 13th Part 5 tried to turn it into like a whodunit mystery thing. Yeah. But anyway, I'm getting off topic. I go off topic. I go all rambling. This is probably what people will probably get into is like the rambling. I'm still getting over a cold. But anyway, so main topic I was thinking about was that just of the idea of these movies starting their own subgenres. Like Friday the 13th started the slasher genre. It didn't really start it because you had like 10 Little Indians for Agatha Christie, and then you had like Psycho and Homicidal and Peeping Tom, and then Black Christmas and Halloween and When a Stranger Calls, and then you had all these other movies came out after it, like Happy Birthday to Me and New Year's Evil and Open House that started the whole 80s slasher genre. But pretty much Friday the 13th set the standard for what a slasher film should be, and it kept it going up until probably about 86, 87. That's when people got tired of it and they started doing more supernatural stuff. Like Prom Night 2 was more in vain with Night on Elm Street. And then you got Night of the Demons and Black Roses and all these different monster demon horror movie monsters. Evil Dead 2 came out around that time too. And then, but there's something magical about the early 80s slasher films. One of them I played on my show Midnight Chillers a while back. It was I can't find the episode anywhere. It's lost. It was we played Aerobicide or Killer Workout, which was an 80s slasher movie set in a gym, like an aerobic gym, and the killer was the owner of the gym and was killing off people in the gym that pissed her off. And it started with the whole big thing, like the re the nucleus of a slasher movie, an 80s Friday the 13th slasher movie, is you have something happen in the pre-credit sequence. A past event happened that caused some pain, and then the characters in the present are oblivious to it and starting to do something that pisses off the character who was hurt in the previous scene. So they're going out and killing people. And it goes from there. Like Happy Birthday to Me, you got My Bloody Valentine, The Prowler, Intruder. And then when you got the torture porn stuff in the early 2000s, I can't think of all of them. There was so many. Most of them went direct to video, but it was like this whole big thing of like, let's gross people out as much as possible. And then each film after Saw 1 had to up the ante, like, and make it bigger and bigger. And same with Friday the 13th. They had to keep having the kills more and more elaborate. Like part 3, they had the eyeball crush pop out because it was in 3D. And then 4, you had the nurse getting gutted. And then Jason's death at the end of part 4, which was glorious. Tom Savini magic. He's a genius. He's a god in the horror genre. He can do no wrong. And then you got part 5 and onward where But then they tried. That's one thing I never understood is like they tried so hard after five, after part four, to 4 and 5 to neuter the films. They say you can't do this, but that's what the money came from was doing that. So they got mad at them for doing what the audience wanted. They say, this is immoral. But then nowadays, you everything's unrated. I mean, you watch a movie, a DVD, you rent a DVD now, and it says unrated version, too hot for theaters or whatever. Which I think it's crazy, but back in the day you couldn't do that. So if they cut it out, you didn't see it at all. You were done. And like part seven, there's scenes that are lost forever because they're considered too violent. The MPA said no, we can't have this, and then they just got left on the shelf, and then film deteriorated and they're destroyed. And they're lost forever. So we never see these deleted scenes except for really grainy VHS copies that Carl Buechler had. They put on the DVDs back in the I think it was like 2004 or five, whenever the box set came out, the first box set, the 1 through 8 Crystal Lake to Manhattan project box set, which I still have somewhere. A, it was great at the time because before that, like you fans don't know how lucky you are, the younger ones, because when we were fans as kids, all we had was Fangoria and like Gore Zone and Solder House magazine to see this stuff and the VHS back in the day. And we hear rumors, you hear stories that say like, "Oh, there's cut scenes, there's this or that." The rumors that never came to fruition, but they were just rumors. And the actors involved were act like they were ashamed of these films up until a few years ago, which is funny because then they're all coming out of the woodwork saying, "Yeah, I was in that." And then they go to conventions and stuff, and it's cool. Ted White used to be ashamed of it, but then you came around because of you guys as fans and your support and saying how awesome these movies are. And you guys, these actors like Corey Feldman came out and said, "Yeah, I'm a Friday 13th guy." So like I would keep saying, this podcast is for the fans. That's why it's called Happy Campers. You guys are happy campers. You're campers. You love Friday 13th, which is camp, and you're happy about it. So I want to hear from you guys. So send me messages and everything. Like I said, I'm fighting a cold right now, so my throat's about to give out. I think I've ranted enough for about 12 minutes now. So I'm going to give it a rest and let myself relax for a little while. So if you want to hear more, just send me a message. Subscribe to the podcast. Love hearing from you guys. All right. Adios.